Hey everybody, thanks for joining. Here's a view of our backyard and our cat Sky, who's keeping close guard on the house. We're gonna have State Rep John Bryant join us in just a moment. He's one of the authors of a recent Texas Democratic proposal to provide tax relief to everybody in Texas, not just to homeowners and businesses, as important as it is to provide relief to them, but to renters as well, and to make sure that some of this record $32 billion surplus that we have in the state of Texas is making its way to Texas school teachers and educators to make sure that we can keep them in the classroom and recruit the next generation of educators to make sure that our kids can get ahead. And like I said, State Representative John Bryant of Dallas, Texas, has been at the very forefront of this. And it's really exciting and refreshing to see Democrats provide proposals of their own as a counterpoint to what the Republican majority in Texas is doing right now. So we're excited to have him join us. It has been a while since I've done an Instagram live, so bear with me as I figure out how to navigate the comments to bring John Bryant on. Fingers crossed that I can figure this out, and then to conduct a conversation or an interview that hopefully is helpful in understanding what is happening in Texas right now. Representative Bryant, thanks for coming. John, can you hear me?
I can't hear you. I can hear me.
That may be just as well. So it looks like we're having some technical difficulties. We've got the image of Representative John Bryant on. So far, he can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Victory. Thanks for joining us. I know you are right in the thick of it today. There are hearings going on at the Capitol. You are just on the tail end of a massive proposal that you and your Democratic colleagues made to return more than $20 billion to Texas taxpayers, and not just some Texas taxpayers, but all Texas taxpayers. In fact, all Texans, whether you're a homeowner, a business owner, a renter, importantly, an educator. You and your colleagues have made a really impressive proposal that I thought was a perfect counterpoint to the disarray in the Republican Party, where for months they haven't been able to agree on what tax relief would look like. John, would you tell us a little bit about this proposal and what it would mean for the average Texan?
Yes, and thanks. I'm honored to be with you, Congressman, if I can call you that.
Sure.
We looked at what was being talked about by the Republicans, and it's so different from what Democrats would do. And even though the culture here in the legislature, after 20 years of being in the minority, has become pretty passive on the part of Democrats, we just thought it was time to start leading again. And with colleagues, we put together a proposal that, as you said, deals with not just the high-end homeowners, but with every homeowner, and deals also with the 38% of Texans that rent their homes and have made the same contribution by paying sales taxes to this surplus as homeowners and everybody else have, and deserve to be have their interests taken care of and paid attention to as much as anybody. But most importantly, and far more importantly, property taxes are the way in which we pay for education. And all of the property tax relief now being discussed relates to the property taxes paying for schools, the school taxes. You can't talk about one without the other, and we can't undermine public education by passing a property tax bill that leaves it out. So the first thing we proposed is increasing the basic allotment, which is a term in our law that relates to the bulk of the money we provide for the public schools, by $1,000 from $6,160 to $1,000 per student. But more importantly, it covers the inflation of the last 10 years in which the independent school districts under Republican leadership have not received any increase in funding. We should be proposing a great deal more, but we're trying to craft a proposal that might get enough Republicans to vote with us to actually pass it. Let me stop there for just a moment if I can. This $33 billion surplus that is the fuel for all the talk about property tax reform needs to be understood carefully. It is not the result of careful management of our resources by our governor. It's not even the result of good luck. We're 44th in state support for public education. If we just moved to 25th, right in the middle, it would take all $33 billion of the surplus, which means that the surplus is not the result of good management, as I said a moment ago. It's the result of depriving public education of the support necessary just to make us 25th in the country. So we have to talk about public education before we talk about everything else. And we have done that in this bill.
I love seeing that. And I tell you what, from traveling the state, including being in your district, and hearing directly from educators in Texas about how badly underpaid they are. In fact, most of them have taken on a second, sometimes a third job just to make ends meet for the privilege of teaching our kids and bringing them up and making sure they're competitive in a global economy. They're taking on weekend jobs at a restaurant or a bar. They're working in small businesses, and they're taking on an increasing load in the classroom because so many other educators have left the profession that class sizes are increasing, paperwork is increasing, the pressure on those students themselves after 2 years of isolation, learning loss, pandemic, it is incredibly tough, probably the toughest time to be in the toughest profession as an educator. And the fact that you and other Texas Democrats prioritize these educators, not only because it's going to be good for those teachers, and that might even be enough for me, but as the father of 3 kids in the public schools here in Texas, those children will be the ultimate beneficiaries. And if we refuse to invest in them now, we will pay the price for that in the years to come, as they will be less competitive against a global workforce, against a workforce from other states, many of whom are coming into Texas and taking the best jobs because they are educated for them. So I love the vision that you set out. And John, I've got to tell you this, as a lifelong Democrat, and I'm 50 years old, so in 30 years of my adult life, it has been all too rare to see Democrats put forward a comprehensive strategic vision for how we address some of these problems. We're all too good at times at diagnosing the problems or blaming Republicans for their failures. But what I loved about what you and your colleagues did is you figured out a way to address this surplus, which is, you're right, it has resulted from disinvestment over the years. And let's also be honest, it has a lot to do with the Biden administration and record federal investment in Texas that we're all the beneficiaries of, even if Republican leadership will rail against the administration. And you found a way to get that back to the homeowner, the business owner, the renter, the worker, and again, importantly, the educator. Tell me where that spirit came from. I know you served in the legislature from 74 to 83. Back then, it was a Democratic majority. What did you bring into your current time in the legislature from your first time there that is providing some of this vision and energy that we're starting to see right now from Texas Democrats?
Well, the principal thing is that at that time, it was much more freewheeling. Democrats were, we had in those days a lot of conservative Democrats as well as progressive Democrats like myself. But on any given day, anybody could offer an amendment, craft a program, and with a reasonable expectation of being able to draw enough votes to pass it. We are now in a situation in which there are 86 Republicans in the House and 64 Democrats. And basically, we see it on every major issue. The vote falls on partisan lines, and they're able to win. It's very rare. We had a few little victories like on the floor last time, but very few of them. And on all the major issues, we're defeated. So we've got to, I think, stop being collaborators and going along to get along. We've got to be casting these issues in sharp contrast so the voters can see what's going on, see what Democrats are doing, and see the difference in us and the Republicans if we expect to win elections in the future. The same can be said of the state Senate. In fact, it's even more difficult than the House. So we crafted a proposal which addresses the public interest that we represent, not the rich and the powerful, but average people. Our homeowner exemption, theirs is $100,000, ours is $100,000, or 25% of your appraised value up to $200,000, which would provide meaningful relief to homeowners. And people are really in a jam with regard to property taxes right now, many of whom are being priced out of their homes. But the other part of it is renters. In Dallas, 57% of all households are rental households. That's true in all the big cities, and statewide, the average is 38%. That's a lot of people, a lot of families. It probably adds up to more human beings than the homeowners. So we have a moral obligation to address their needs as well. This would provide a rebate to them, like many other states do, of 10% of their rent, up to a total of $3.8 billion. And it should be more. I wish it could be more. We're trying to craft a program that it is within the amount of money available and it might draw a few Republican votes over. So those are the three pieces of it. We deal with education first, homeowners and renters.
John, to what do you ascribe the fact that the Republicans apparently, if we believe the headlines, have come to some consensus around a compromise within their own caucus in compression, a cap on valuation, some other things that will primarily address and maybe only address the needs of homeowners and business owners and do nothing for renters and not even touch the issue of the severe teacher shortage we have right now and how underpaid those educators are. For how much longer, let's assume that this passes and the voters ratify whatever constitutional amendment is necessary to enact this, how much longer can Republicans fail to address the needs of renters, of low and middle income Texans, of teachers, and get away with it electorally? As you just mentioned, there are so many millions, tens of millions of renters. If cumulatively we add up head of household, all the dependents within that household, that's a rental household or an apartment, and they're in no way represented or reflected in this GOP majority proposal, which might very well become law. Yours offered an olive branch to some of those moderate Republicans, to Republicans in rural districts. Look, if the average teacher in Dallas is underpaid by $7,500, the average teacher in parts of the Panhandle and in East Texas and in rural parts of the state, it's $13,000 down, $14,000 down, $15,000 down. Those rural educators are getting absolutely screwed by their representatives. And we haven't even begun to talk about vouchers yet. How much longer can this persist? And how do we go, John, from your excellent proposal, which if we were betting people probably will not pass and become law this special session, to a point where it is taken seriously by the other side, not just something for us Democrats to rally behind, and might have a chance to become part of a consensus or compromise proposal, and then lead to Democrats winning political power so that we can actually help renters and homeowners and educators, the very people who are prioritized in your legislation?
Well, I think that as long as Democrats are passive, and we have a substantial number of Democrats in the House who have decided to basically collaborate with the Republican leadership rather than help us strike a contrast with their priorities, we're not going to have enough people who go to vote who believe that there's a possibility of change. They have to see us advocating. They have to see us offering legislation in order to do that. And when Democrats vote for the Republican appropriation bill, I mean, the appropriation bill is what defines who Democrats are versus Republicans. And when they vote for the Republican tax proposals, again, that's what defines the difference in our two parties. The voters think, well, what difference does it make if I work my way all the way down the ballot to state senator or state representative? What's the point when the outcome is the same no matter what I do? We have to show them that, as in other states, particularly other big states, we can make a difference if we can win a majority back. I just would point out to you, I don't mean to flatter my host here, but in my view, you're the finest statewide candidate we've ever had 2 times. But if we haven't built a foundation, candidates like you are going to struggle. And we work hard here. A lot of members do, making great speeches about the social issues, which are very important, like LGBTQ stuff and diversity and inclusion. But you can't silo these issues and go, well, I did my job on that one, and now I can go collaborate with Republicans and vote their budget priorities through. You've got to be fighting the war, not just one battle at a time. And I think Democratic voters are going to have to become, in their communities, committees of monitoring what their legislators are doing and letting them know they're paying attention, that they want them to cast their votes and to advocate for Democratic priorities and not try to get away with pursuing personal goals by collaborating with the Republicans.
Tell me a little bit more about how you see that working out. And I'll play devil's advocate for you on this one.
Sure.
We're in an underfunded part of the state here in far west Texas, in El Paso. And growing up, we always talked about losing out on our fair share. You folks in Dallas, the people in Houston, Austin, San Antonio, always got the lion's share of infrastructure spending, the goodies from the state budget. The Rio Grande Valley, El Paso, rural communities were left to our own devices. And so you might see members of our delegation, and I'm not speaking for them, but they may say, you know what, Beto, in order for me to get that funding for the four-year medical school or the nursing school, or to build our loop road, and we were one of the last Texas communities to build a loop road, we got to play ball with the Republicans who are in charge. We don't like it. This is the hand we were dealt. And so to your point, John, yes, we're going to stand on that hill for LGBTQ rights. We're going to stand on that hill to raise the age to 21 to purchase an AR-15. But we're just going to get along on the state budget, which is where you fund or defund all the real priorities that affect, teacher pay, for example, or the things that we really depend on day to day in our lives. It's not that some are more or less important than others, but they're all important if we're going to lead this fight. Talk about what some see as a necessary compromise they have to make in order to deliver for resource-starved communities like El Paso.
Well, that's a perfectly good question. You only achieve something in an atmosphere of working together with the other party when you're strong. You don't get anywhere when you walk into the negotiating room and you have no leverage. Leverage is from unity. Leverage comes from 64 Democrats working together. I mean, the El Paso Independent School District has not had an increase in funding for 10 years. The same with all of the independent school districts. Why do we have to wait so long, for example, to finally get a medical school down in the Rio Grande Valley? Only recently has that happened. Why does El Paso not have a law school? You've got a great university there. You've got a lot of people. Why do, well, the reason for that is we're not negotiating for strength. It takes 51 votes to pass a constitutional amendment and 51 votes to suspend rules that are often have to be suspended to make progress legislatively. We have 64 Democrats. If everybody was working together, they would understand we're not going to let you get by with passing these things unless our priorities are met. And Right now, when it's just every man for himself, I'm a member of the Appropriations Committee, for example, because I exercised my seniority to get on there, not because the speaker was happy to put me on there. We didn't even have a Democratic caucus to discuss what are our shared priorities as members of the Appropriations Committee. What is our strategy? How will we use the 10 votes we have out of 26 to make sure that we come up with some of our priorities before the year is over? In any other legislative setting, as you know, you were in Congress, Democrats would caucus and would decide what their priorities are, and they would have a strategy for gaining those priorities. And it would not be an acceptable thing to go off on your own and try to make your own side deal and therefore cause the loss of everybody else's priorities. Yet that goes on, and it's really going to require changing culture here, and that changing culture will take place only as a result of people back home who confer the Democratic nomination on these candidates, demanding that they begin to work together, work in unity, and not always be doing a solo act.
You gave what for me is the perfect answer to that question, that our strength really lies in our ability to coherently provide a vision, a strategy, and stick to that, even when we're tempted, and I'm talking about individual state legislators, to break off and make a separate piece with the governor or the speaker or the lieutenant governor, because they promised us some goodie. And I don't mean to, minimize, what some of these legislators are able to get by calling it a goodie. A nursing school is a pretty important thing, or highway funding, it's a pretty important thing. But to your point, for a decade of no increase to ensure that the students in El Paso, a majority minority community, one of the poorest urban counties in America, to deny them the best education possible so that they can go out there and add value to this community, contribute to the state economy, create great things for our country and our planet, and bring those resources and opportunities back to El Paso. Well, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot over the long term. And again, I'm not singling out any legislator or even the Democratic caucus in the state legislature. It's a tough road that they're on, and it's been a tough road for the last 30 years, certainly the last 20 years in the minority. And with the exception of you and maybe very few others, there's no muscle memory of being in the majority and of having that strength and that power and sitting across from our Republican colleagues at the negotiating table and really being able to maintain a poker face. Right now, those meetings at that table are happening individually, and one Democrat after another is peeling off. And listen, your colleagues, those other Democrats, are incredibly courageous. I saw that happen when they walked off the floor to deny the Republican majority a quorum, to impose voter suppression and voter intimidation. I saw that when they risked their careers and sometimes risked arrest by leaving the state altogether to do the same. So I don't know that there's any lack of courage, but that ability to stay together, that cohesion that is so necessary to be taken seriously, that seems to be missing. And I don't know that it's anyone's fault necessarily, but maybe to put it positively, I read an interview with you in Texas Monthly last week, and I got in touch with you and just commended you on your answers in it. I just had not seen that spirit or the articulation of the problem and the solution in this way before, at least not that I remember. It doesn't mean that other people haven't done that. And so I hope that what you are doing is catching hold in the party, because probably like you, when I saw Gloria Johnson and Justin Jones and Justin Pearson, those three legislators in Tennessee who had the courage of their convictions on this debate on gun violence after there was a horrific massacre in that state. And two of those legislators were ejected for having the courage of their convictions and later reinstated by their constituents. I wanted that spirit in Texas. I want to see our people put it all on the line for all of us. And you may or may not win those fights, but you will inspire and encourage people. And you'll have more Democrats say, you know what, the heck with it, I'm going to run for county commissioner or justice of the peace or state rep or state senator, because my side is fighting and I know what we stand for now. And I really feel like you embody that right now and are bringing that back to our party. And so I hope that we see more of that going forward. As we close out, we're about to have a big fight on vouchers. There's been one kind of slow simmering over the regular legislative session. Governor didn't get what he wanted, essentially privatizing our public tax dollars, taking them away from public schools and sending them to private institutions, which hurts Texas school kids everywhere, but nowhere more so than in rural communities where there is no private school alternative. What do you think is the best approach for not just Texas Democrats, but Texans who believe in a quality public education and realize that it's under attack unlike any time in our history?
Well, let me emphasize, and this is worthy of an entire program, the Republicans today, it's fair to say, and it's not over the top to say it, it's fair to say, do not believe in public education. Now, there are a group of about 20 of them out of 84, mostly rural members, who oppose vouchers and are standing up for their local school systems. But by and large, the right wing that controls the Republican Party today, that has become so extreme, do not believe in public education. They refer to it as the government schools. They're trying to relegate it to a status of like the public hospital. They all go to, like in Dallas, Presbyterian and Baylor and the nice hospitals. All the poor folks go to Parkland. They're trying to make the public schools be that way. And that's why for 10 years, can you imagine, for 10 years with all this inflation and with the growth in the student body population, we haven't had any increase in funding for public schools. All the increase has gone to charter schools. So public independent school districts is what I'm referring to. So we have to understand that vouchers is the latest proposal to come along that is directly coming out of support for public education. And let me remind everyone, whether they call them education savings accounts or vouchers, it doesn't matter. This is not a new idea, and it has a very evil history. Vouchers were the earliest proposal for how to avoid segregating or having your children attend an integrated school. They come right out of the Deep South. Let's just have public money given to each family, and they can go off and be part of a segregation academy where everybody's white. That's the origin of vouchers. It's not too far from that today, because these private schools, they talk about school choice. The only thing the word choice applies to is they get to choose the students, not the students get to choose to go there. They don't have to take the kid that has an extra problem. They don't have to take the kids, the whole population of children that public schools take. And by the way, when our kids go to school with everybody, they're much better off than when they go to school with just one kind of person. And that's what the Democrats understand instinctively, but that's what the Republicans are trying to undo. It's really trying to take us back 50 years.
You all heard it directly from Representative John Bryant. Public education for Texas children is under attack in this state, and the governor will stop at nothing to further undermine our public schools, which, as Representative Bryant has already pointed out, have been badly underfunded for at least a decade, in effect, much longer than that. And now he wants to take the floor absolutely out from under those kids and those teachers. It's bad everywhere in Texas, but I know Wesley just asked, what can we do in rural Texas? Wesley, for those in rural Texas, and I saw some folks in Canyon, Texas, and in the Panhandle who are on the feed right now, you arguably have the most to lose right now. Often those public school districts are the largest employers in your community. It's the best equalizer that our kids have. And to lose that might mean to lose everything in some of these places, especially in those towns that have already lost their public hospital. So this war on rural Texas, you've got to fight back, and you've got to hold your representative, whether they're a Republican or a Democrat, accountable. And as John will probably agree, there are some Republicans who represent rural districts who are concerned about this plan to privatize public education and again, remove the choice from parents and really make it the choice for private schools as to who they're going to admit or who they're going to decline. So please stay tuned. And John, please keep up the great work. Keep inspiring us here in Texas. Keep showing us that there is a fight within the Texas Democratic Party right now at a moment where it really matters the most. And we may try to tune back in with you as these voucher hearings begin to get underway and as that fight really comes to a head. But thank you for joining us today, and thank you for the fight that you're leading right now in Texas.
Thank you. And thank you for all you're continuing to do for us. I'm proud to be on the program and hope to get to work with you further.
Me too. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks for all the great comments and the questions. We're going to try to keep coming back at least once a week and amplify and elevate great Texans. A lot of them will happen to be Texas Democrats who give us cause for inspiration and hope in this state. All right. We'll see you all soon. Adios, John. Adios, everybody.